Elizabeth Warren reintroduced what's called an ultra millionaires tax. It's basically a wealth tax. I'm going to talk about the thresholds, the lines for this wealth tax in just a little bit. But Sean Hannity went on his radio show and decided to talk about this, and boy, did I get a kick out of this.
So it may sound great to a lot of Americans, the idea that Elizabeth Warren is now proposing a wealth tax, which probably means that Joe Biden will do it because he's now basically taking dictation from everybody in the Democratic Party. All right, wealth tax, 2% net value of assets of the wealthiest people in America. We build the future for all of our kids by investing, taxing, in opportunity, she said. It'd be, contending that the small tax would generate at least $3 trillion. Now, if you're not going to be subject to that tax, you're probably saying, great. Here's the problem. All these people that are leaving and all these companies that are leaving New York post-pandemic, post $1 billion cut to the NYPD, all these people leaving, the 13.5% state income tax in California, the 10% tax in New York. Why are all those people moving to Texas and Tennessee and red states and Florida and the Carolinas and everywhere in between? They're moving to get the hell out to save more money. It's an insane conversation I have every year with my financial advisors. That whatever you do, Hannity, don't die in New York. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll try not to die in New York. I'm going to try really hard this year not to die in New York, as if I know the day that God's going to call me home. And so, okay, why? Because New York, now, money that's already been taxed my whole life. And believe me, I pay everything. I have to. I guarantee it gets pulled without even, there's no doubt every tax return gets pulled. And the good thing is a lot of it's W-2'd anyway, so it's not a big deal. But they pull it out, and I always say, just pay it, pay it. That's my constant refrain. And so what's going to happen when people leave those states? Now, if Elizabeth Warren does this in the country, do you not think that the people that got rich, most of which got rich by not being stupid and working hard? I don't know many people that were born with a silver spoon in their mouth. I just don't know that crowd. I didn't grow up with that crowd. So I'm looking at this and they think it's great. The bill's going to be dubbed the Ultra Millionaire Tax Act. Okay. What do you think? What is happening that nobody's paying attention to? People are leaving the country. They are giving up their citizenship.
Few points. Number one, that's actually not at all guaranteed that that's going to happen. He was bringing up the example of states. So yes, it's easier to go from one state to another state if you feel like, you don't like the laws in certain states. But when you do it in the entire United States of America, there's plenty of people who are culturally attached to this country and love this country and wouldn't leave the country if they have to pay a slightly higher tax. Would some do it? Maybe some, but I don't care. Somebody's going to fill that void to the extent there even is a void, and will take the place. I mean, it's a pretty big thing to just give up on, the United States of America simply because you don't want to pay a little bit more in taxes. So the state-by-state comparison to the whole country comparison is actually terrible because, I see the logic when it comes to a state-by-state comparison, but when it comes to the country, it's a lot harder for people to just up and leave. Okay, but again, will some do that? Maybe some, but I would bet certainly not the majority, and those who do it, I don't care. I don't care. And by the way, he sort of actually proves our point in the segment, because when he talks about his own taxes, what does he say? He lives in New York, he pays the high taxes, and he says, just pay it. That's what I always say. That's my constant refrain. Quote, just pay it, just pay it. Most of the uber wealthy people would say, just pay it. But listen, this is not, I'm burying the lead here. Because you know who this applies to? This ultra millionaires tax? It applies to people with a net worth of $50 million or more. $50 million or more. He's talking about it like this is going to affect your average Joe and Jane. That's nonsense. By the way, notice, he doesn't tell you who it applies to. He doesn't tell you the threshold. He doesn't tell you the number. I wonder why he's not telling you the number. He's not telling you the number because he knows that if he brings it up, everybody in the audience will be like, I don't know, man, that actually seems kind of reasonable to me. A 2% wealth tax if you have a net worth of $50 million or over? That, by the way, that polls phenomenally high. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think it's over 80%. It's definitely over 70%. So, and just so you know what you need as a net worth to be in the top 1%? $4.4 million. $50 million net worth is like a fraction of a percent. It's the very top people. And he's going to bat for them. He's going to bat for them to protect them from a 2% tax on wealth over $50 million. I mean, it's ridiculous. And it raises $3 trillion. You know what you could do with that $3 trillion? You could do a lot with that $3 trillion. You could do a lot with that money. You give people UBI, you give people health care, you give people college, you could pay off student loan debt almost twice, 2 times over. The argument he's making reminds me of the argument that was made when they did the original Wall Street bailout during the subprime mortgage crisis and Great Recession. The argument from Washington was, hey, we have to do it. We don't have a choice, because if we don't do it, these companies can't retain the talent. Think about how ridiculous that is. These are the same executives that just made the decisions that crashed their respective companies and tanked the global economy. And now the argument's being made, we need to reward them for that and bail them out because we need to keep the talent. Maybe they're not so talented. By the way, it's also the case already that the wealthy pay a lower effective tax rate than the average American family because they have all their loopholes and their deductions and their workarounds. So really what we're talking about here, it is true that we're just talking about getting them to pay their fair share. And he brings up, all the rich people are from hard work. No. In fact, 40% of the wealth of the rich is inherited. 40%. That's a huge number. So it isn't like they're all just the hardest working and we have a meritocracy. He would like to think that's the case because he's wealthy. But no, unfortunately, that's not the way it works. We don't have a meritocracy. So, I mean, it says a lot about Sean Hannity that this is how he spends his time. Let me argue in favor of the people who have a $50 million net worth or above. Let me protect them from a wealth tax. And not tell people the actual number it applies to, because then that would make my argument look bad. And also he contradicts his own argument by saying, all these people will leave if you do this tax. Meanwhile, he says it in New York, just pay it. Will some leave? Yes, a small number. Negligible. Most of them will pay it. A handful won't. But the amount of money that we raise would be phenomenal. And what we could do with that money, it's endless. You could do a number of amazing things with that money. But don't buy this nonsense that billionaires and the uber wealthy get to hold you hostage, and dictate public policy forcefully. That's the problem in this system, is that the billionaires and the corporations, they've bought the system. And so they rig the rules in their favor. All we're talking about here is unrigging the rules. Again, they already pay a lower tax rate than the average American family. Why is that allowed? And even if you were to say to Sean, hey, at least make them pay the same, he'd be like, no, can't raise taxes on any of them at all. Because he's a hack. He's a total corporate hack. Really pathetic. He's one of the worst. But anyway, there you have it. This is how he spends his time, defending people who have a net worth of $50 million or over and protecting them from a 2% wealth tax.